Okay, so welcome everybody. We're going to talk about touchscreen design today. It's going to be fun. If you have any questions, enter them in the chat window on your Ring Central toolbar. After we're done with the presentation, we'll have a Q&A. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. My name is Gina Thomas. I am the training manager at C&K Systems and your hostess for Training Bytes, a digestible approach to counterpoint training. Some of you carry merchandise that is small, like fine jewelry, or bulky, like furniture. And sometimes those small items are awkward to tag because the label tends to overpower the beauty of the fine jewelry. Or if you're selling bulky items like furniture, your customers aren't going to drag a dresser or a couch up to point of sale for you to scan a barcode. So knowing how to manipulate and design in the touchscreen designer, you can actually create buttons to sell those fine jewelry items or those small items that are just awkward to barcode, and the same with your bulky items. For those of you that have upgraded to the newer version of Counterpoint, you may have noticed that nothing didn't change in touchscreen except excuse me, except the look of the buttons. Like they're really pale in the new version, making it hard to read, and all the fonts default to white. So I'll show you how to fix that. Then most of us on our main screen, by default, only have 12 or 16 buttons. So if you have multiple items that you want to link to buttons, you're going to run out of buttons on your main screen pretty quick. And I'll show you how to take care of that. So we're going to learn how to connect buttons to items today in touchscreen designing. We're going to learn how to create new pages and link buttons to new pages. And then I'm going to show you how to do something really cool called a run page. With a run page, you can have multiple actions on one page, multiple buttons. And with the click of one button, Counterpoint will touch all the buttons on your run page for you. It's a pretty nice feature. So some helpful hints when designing. I recommend that when you're touchscreen designing that you actually design on a point of sale terminal. Here's why. If you have a 50-inch monitor in your back office and you design on your 50-inch monitor, when you go to load that design on your 17-inch monitor at point of sale, it's not going to fit. So best just to design on the point of sale terminal. You can't open the designer on a terminal that's currently logged in to touchscreen ticket entry. You can only have one person work on a design at a time. In other words, you can't have two people simultaneously working on the same design because they'll overwrite each other. And then as you're designing, you might want to take time out to test your designs at point of sale, just to make sure that if you have any broken buttons, you catch them right away. So kind of a 30,000 foot view. We're going to take you real quick on this PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll get into the software. So the first thing you need to do is figure out which design you need to affect. So in some retail operations where they're selling mixed merchandise, for example, in my store, which is a gift shop, I sell gift items, but I also have a coffee bar. Now, my coffee bar point of sale is going to have a different design than my gift shop point of sale because I sell coffee products at my coffee bar and I don't sell coffee products in my gift shop. So you have to figure out which stations are using which designs. Or in a multi-store situation, you're going to have to figure out which stores are using which designs because you may have an outlet store, which is going to have a different design than, say, your regular retail store. So it's pretty easy to figure out. If you go to Setup, Point of Sale, Stations, and here you see I have my main store, Station 1. And if I come down here, I can see that this particular store and the station at this store is using the combo touchscreen design. Then to actually access the designer, you go to Setup, Point of Sale, Touchscreen Codes. You do a lookup for the touchscreen code, and so you'll see this lookup list. And then once you load that design, you click on Button Editor. I strongly recommend before you start designing and when you're done designing that you save a copy of the layout. Touchscreen designing can be a little unforgiving, and you can accidentally wipe out pages or buttons. So if you save a copy of the layout, you'll be able to restore from that saved copy, and it's super easy to do. You're just going to come to the Layout tab in the Designer. You're going to click on Save, and that will take you to an export folder where you'll type in a file name, and then you'll click on Save. Now, something that I've noticed in my support is that some people, every time they save a layout, they save it to a brand new file name. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it will start to clutter your export folder. And if you have to restore from a layout, you're going to have to figure out which is the most recent layout. So it's really not a problem to initially save your layout, and then as you resave the layout, just to resave it to the original one and let your new layout overwrite the original. And I'll actually give you an example of that when we get into the software. So kind of just a brief overview. We're going to talk about the General tab in the Designer, which is basically where you can change your button sizes, your button styles. You can add or delete rows and columns. The Buttons tab, that's where all the action is. This is where you can actually link buttons to items. You can create new pages. You can create run pages. You can change the fonts of the buttons, and you can also change the button colors. So a lot of things you can do in that Buttons tab. The Totals tab is where you pick the totals design that you want to display on the bottom of the screen, and there's like half a dozen different designs. The Options tab is only for two actions. One is called Pause at Quantity. If you enable Pause at Quantity, it means every single time you touch a button to sell an item, it's going to pop up a quantity field. Now, that's not practical in a lot of scenarios. It's pretty practical in a garden center because garden centers tend to sell more than one whenever they, touch a button to sell an item. The other statement is new to the latest version and service pack of Counterpoint, and it's called Allow HTML to take focus. Now, what this means is if you click into the totals screen, so the totals, at the bottom of the screen, that's all in HTML. If you click into that box totals, it's going to disable your cursor on the item number line where you typically scan. So it could result in lost scans. So the recommendation is to uncheck this because it is checked by default in the latest release. Don't ask me why, but it is. So then we're going to focus on linking a button to an item, which is pretty easy. You select an empty button, you give it an action of item using this drop down here. So there's a drop down right there. And when you select the action item, you'll get a field down at the bottom where you can actually do a lookup to select the item that you're linking the button to. Then we'll talk about creating a new page and linking a button to a new page. So that's pretty easy. You just create a new page, then you go back to your main page, you select an empty button, you choose the action button page, which is kind of a funny name, but it means when I touch this button, go to my new page of buttons. And then down here at the bottom, you can actually select the page that you want that button to link to. Now for a run page, again, we'll create a new page. We'll go back to the main page. We'll select the action run page, and then we'll tell Counterpoint which page we want to run. You know, that page of buttons we want Counterpoint to press for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in the software. And I have a toolbar in my way, so let me get that. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to figure out what design my station is using. So I'm logged into my main store, and I want a design for station 1. So I'm just going to go to Setup, Point of Sale, Stations. Let's go ahead and move my toolbar out of the way. So if I use my right-facing arrow, you can see at my store called Oh, Counterpoint, don't let me down now. You could see at my store called East Station 2, I'm using a combo. I'm just going to go backwards here. So at East 1, I'm using combo. But at my bistro, I'm using a design called Bistro. Now I want a design for my main one, so I'm just going to click on my arrows here until I get to main one. And so here, main station 1, I'm using combo. So I'm just going to close out of here. So now I'm going to access the designer itself, setup, point of sale, touchscreen codes. So here I'm going to do a lookup for my combo touchscreen design. So I'm just going to come in here and do a lookup, choose combo, click OK, and then I'm going to go to my button editor. Uh-oh, touchscreen configuration cannot be opened while a session of ticket entry is open. So that means that this computer that I'm logged into, I already have touchscreen point of sale open, so I can't get into the designer. So I'm just going to close out of here and close out of here, and then I'm going to close out of point of sale. So if I come here and go to touchscreen, so you can see it's already open. Earlier in the PowerPoint presentation, I talked about that switch, the HTML, let it have the focus. Now I currently have that enabled, which of course I would recommend you disable it. But notice how my item number is blinking up here in the cursor, or my cursor is blinking up here in the item number field. If I actually come down here and start clicking in this part of the screen, this is the HTML part of the screen, watch how my cursor disappears. Boom. So now my cursor's gone. And again, if I start scanning items, they're just not going to scan, and then my people are going to be very confused. Okay, so I'm going to go back to setup, point of sale, touchscreen codes. I'm going to find my combo. There it is. And then I'm going to click on button editor. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my layout. Hey, by the way, something that's kind of a little weird in the newer versions of Counterpoint, when you load your button editor, sometimes you get a lot of air over here on the right. I mean, sometimes it's even a lot bigger than what you're seeing here. So if you want to make it, kind of the default size, if you right click on the title bar and just say default size, it gets rid of all that air. That air might get in the way of your designing. Okay, now that I'm in the designer, the first thing I'm going to do is save my layout. So I'm going to come here to layout. I'm going to save, and Counterpoint takes me to my layout folder. And this is the layout I'm going to save over. You can see I was playing with it a little bit earlier today. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to overwrite the old layout and then just click on save. And then I get the overwrite message. I'm just going to say yes. Okay, now that I've saved that, I'm ready to start designing. So since we're here on the layout tab, let me show you what this layout tab does besides saving your layout. So notice it says button panel position right. That means all these buttons are on the right hand side of the page. So if I use this drop down and choose left, now notice it doesn't take effect right away. So anytime you do something in the designer, if you want to see the results, you need to click on preview. So now the button panel has moved over to the left. I'm just going to change that back over to the right. And I'm going to preview. Fixed buttons. Your fixed buttons are typically the 3 or 2 rows down here at the bottom. Now, if I want these fixed buttons to live at the top of the page, I can use this drop down, click on top, and choose preview. And now my fixed buttons are at the top. This top panel position means where are these buttons going to live? On the left or the right? And it seems to be broken in my version because it's not working. So if you do have a different version of Counterpoint than what I'm running, these buttons will climb over or crawl over to the right. All right, let's talk a little bit about navigation. Navigation in the designer is not like navigating at point of sale. So at point of sale, when I click on the More menu button, I go right to the More page. But in the designer, I actually have to use this right facing green arrow to navigate to that page. And then if I want to go back to the previous page, I need to click on this left facing arrow. Now, another thing to know about the navigation is that if you go down more than one level, it's going to be a little bit different. So if I go to More, there's my More page, and then I go to Customer Functions. So here's my Customer Functions page. Now, when I click on the left facing arrow, it just takes me back to the More page. And if I click on it again, it just takes me back to the Customer Function page. So it's only going backwards a level. So if I want to get to my main page, I have to use this drop down, scroll up, oops, and choose my main page. Okay, so that's navigation. On the General tab, this is where we can change our button sizes. The first thing I want to point out is this switch that says lock height width. So what that means is that when I come over to these sliders, they're going to work together. So if I take this slider over on the left, notice it's going to follow, or the top slider is going to follow the slider on the left. And again, my buttons didn't change until I come over here to preview. So I'm just going to change it back to the way it was and preview. Now, if I uncheck this, then the sliders work independently. So if I use my left slider, the top slider is not going to follow. So I'm just going to make this button shorter. And then when I preview, now my buttons are shorter. And I'm just going to go ahead and lock that. This round corners does not work on this particular button style. I'm using the standard button style, which I like because it's nice and crisp and everything's really sharp looking. So if I click on round corners and I preview, nothing happens. My corners are still pretty square. But if I switch to a different button style like gel and I click on preview, see how now the buttons are kind of rounded? So that's what the round corners does. But again, does not work with the standard design. I'm going to go back to standard so you can see. Hide empty buttons only hides empty buttons at point of sale. So notice I've got 4 empty buttons over here. And if I logged into point of sale, I would see these empty buttons. They'd be gray with a little white outline around them. So if I click on hide empty buttons, then these will disappear from point of sale. It'll just be a blank space. When it comes to button style, again, I like the standard, but you can choose gel. And so that just has kind of a translucent feeling and look. It also has a different font that it's using. If I choose gradient, it has even a more translucent type of look, and it changes all the fonts to white. And if I choose Metro, then the buttons do have a little bit sharper color, but again, all the fonts are white. Now, what I don't like about standard, and this is awfully silly, is that when I click on a button, I don't know what button I'm clicked on and what button I'm modifying unless I look over here to the action page or the actual action. So customer lookup, you can see the action is customer lookup. Now, if I go to the gel, gradient, or metro, when I click on a button, I get black brackets around it. So that way I know exactly what button I'm working on. The text position. This is the text position on the buttons. So if you have images, this text position center is not going to work. But if you choose top and preview, then your text will go to the top of the button. If you choose bottom preview, then your text goes to the bottom of the button. Rows and columns. Fixed rows are these rows here. You know, this is a row going left to right. A column is going top to bottom. So if I want to add an additional fixed row. Maybe I want 4 fixed rows. I could just put a 4 here and preview, and you can see now I have a fourth row, but it's also cutting off some of my other buttons on the top of the screen, so then I would just need to resize. But maybe I want to just get rid of one of these rows, so I'm just going to make my fixed rows 2. So I'm going to click on 2, and I'm going to preview. So now I only have 2 rows. Uh-oh, you know what? I really didn't want to get rid of that third row. Let me bring it back. So I'm going to put a 3 here, and I'm going to preview. And notice when I eliminate a row, and if I think I can bring it back by specifying the original amount of rows, it just brings back blank buttons. So that's why I'm really glad I saved my layout. So I can go back to layout, and I can go to load, and I can just load my layout, and now the buttons come back. Now, another thing you could do is just exit touchscreen without saving. But, having that layout saved and being able to restore from the layout is just a little bit of a time saver. So my item rows are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I could add another row here, but unless I resize my buttons, that row is going to be cut off. Columns, so here's column 1, 2, 3, 4. If you add more columns, it's going to start to eat into your point of sale screen. So you want to be conscious of that, but let's see what that looks like. So I'm just going to say 5 columns. So you can see it does add another column over here, but again, it's eating into your point of sale screen. This top means how many buttons are up top here. So currently I have 6, and if I want to add a couple more buttons up there because I'm going to configure them and design them, now I have 2 additional buttons to configure. Some people put their like void line and void this ticket buttons up here, and you can do that if you like. The spacing pixels is just how much space is in between the buttons. So right now I'm set to zeros. So if I change my horizontal to 4, see what it's doing horizontally? It's just giving me more space. And again, it's eating into my point of sale screen. If I change vertical, it's just putting more space in between the rows. If I change border, it's putting more space up here at the top. So I'm just going to make those all zeros. And I'm going to preview. Now the fonts here, these are not universal changes, unfortunately. So if I think that by coming in here, I can just in one felled swoop change all the fonts on all my buttons with images, I would be mistaken. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to come in here into this lookup, and I'm going to say, you know what? This font I really don't like. I really like the Lucinda, and I really want it to be demi-bold, and I want it to be larger. I want it to be 10. So I'm going to click on Apply, and I'm going to click OK, just so you can see. So see what happens? It really only changed on a few buttons. It changed on my shipping button, and it changed on my unselect line button. And here's why. Because if I go to the shipping button here, you can see that it's using something called a default font. That default font is what I specified here. So because that button was already using a default font, it changed. Now if I go to my customer lookup, see how it's using its own font? It's not set to the default. So if I want to set it to the new default, I would have to click on default font. And you literally have to do this one button at a time. I'm just going to restore my layout. And so now I've gone back to my original fonts. And the same is true with the buttons without images. And this item number 1 is just changing the fonts up here where you scan your barcodes. And you won't see any change in the designer. You'll see the change actually at point of sale. I'm going to skip buttons for now because that's where we're going to do most of our work. We already talked about layout and changing the panel positions and loading and saving our layouts. Totals. This affects what's down here. So if I go into this lookup here, you can see I've got, half a dozen different total layouts to look at. So I'll just select another one so you can see what it looks like. and then I'll preview. And so you can see it. Whoa, that is really tough to read. Now it's cutting off. Now I could try and jockey my mouse here in between the regular point of sale screen and the totals and try and lift this up. But oh my, that's just a lot of work. So if you come here to the HTML height, that will lift it up for you. Okay, and I really like the default layout the best, so I'm going to go back to that. Okay, so that one looks pretty nice. And again, if I want to lift this up so it's a little bit higher, see if I jockey my mouse, I'm kind of getting a bidirectional arrow. If I hold down my left click and move up, it moves that part of the total screen up. Or I could use the slider, which is just a little bit easier. And then, of course, on options, and we talked about this, pause at quantity means every single time I choose an item with a button, pop up the quantity box. So I typically, again, unless I'm in a garden center, I'm typically not going to do that. And then I'm going to disable allow HTML to take focus. Okay, I'm going to come back to the buttons tab. So one of the easiest things to do in the touchscreen designer is to copy and paste buttons to a new position. So if I want to move this quantity button up a row, it's very simple. Click, copy, click on a blank button, and paste. You can even copy paste to different pages. So if I have something on another page that I want to bring out to the main page, I can go to More, use my right facing arrow. I'm going to go to Customer Functions and use my right facing arrow. And I'm going to move Paid on Account. Oh, look how faded that button is. My goodness. This is a result of the upgrade. Well, I'm definitely going to need to fix that. But first, I'm going to move the button to my main page. So click, copy, and I have to use my drop down here and go to my main page. Choose a blank button, click, paste. In order to fix these faded buttons, you just have to change the color on the button. So if you click on the button and you come here to color, you can just choose another color, click on preview, and now that button's a little bit easier to read. Now you're not limited to just these colors here. You can actually go to other, and then you have more of a palette where you can control how dark or how light that color is. So if I choose this really dark midnight blue, that's going to be really tough to read. So if I click OK, I'll show you what I mean by that. Oh my, that is really tough to read. Let me go and lighten up that color. So I'll just come here to this slider. I'll click OK. Much easier to read. With copy and paste, you can even copy and paste to other designs. Unfortunately, you can only copy paste buttons. You can't copy and paste pages. But if I wanted to copy and paste this button to another design, I could just click, copy, exit the designer. I'll save my changes so far. Go to a different design. I'll go to my bistro design. Click on the button editor. I'll click on a blank button and paste. So that's copy pasting to different designs. Pretty nice feature. But again, only buttons, not pages. Let me go back to my combo. When you do copy and paste, you'll end up overwriting buttons if you paste on top of another button. I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I click on copy, paste, now I've overwritten that quantity button. So even if I move this button, I've still overwritten the original button. So click on copy, I'll move it over here and paste. See how it doesn't uncover the old quantity? It totally just overwrites it. Clearing a button is also very easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click on clear. And again, you don't see those results right away unless you click on preview or you click on another button. Clear, and then I'm going to clear. And then I'm going to move this button back down to the bottom and clear the other one. Okay, so that's copy paste. Super, super easy to do. If I want to link a button to an item, first I need a blank button right there. The action, I'm going to use this drop down, and I'm just going to type an I for item, or you could scroll if you want. So I'm going to say it's an item. I'm going to give it a caption. But you know what? I don't know what item I'm selecting yet, so maybe I'll give it a caption in a minute. But when I do select the action item, I get a field down here that gives me an item lookup. So I can just go to this item lookup, and I can tell Counterpoint, when I press that button, I want to sell a redwood chaise. It's bulky, it's furniture. Now that I've selected the item and I know what it is, I'm going to go up to the caption here, and I'm just going to type redwood chaise. And again, notice that there's no changes to that button because I haven't previewed it yet. So I'll preview it now. Oh, well, that's a really boring button. Let me give that a color. So I can come in here into my color palette, and I can just choose a fancy color. Preview it now. Oh, that's much more exciting. Notice there's a default quantity and posit quantity. So on the options tab, we had posit quantity, which meant every single time I choose a button, posit quantity. So what's nice about this feature here is it's button specific. So when I say posit quantity, it means when I click on this button, pop up the quantity field so I can change the quantity. And that way it's only affecting that one button. So that's linking a button to an item. Pretty easy. But again, in another scenario where I might have, I might sell fine jewelry. These 4 buttons aren't going to be enough to cover all my fine jewelry items. So what I need to do is I need to create a new page. And that new page, I'll have enough buttons to sell my fine jewelry items. So I'm going to come up here to new page, and I'm just going to call it, actually, let's call it furniture because I don't have any fine jewelry. We'll call it furniture. So now here's my furniture page. But now I need a button on my main page to link to the furniture page. So I'm going to go back to my main page. I'm going to click on a single button. I'm going to tell Counterpoint the action is button page. That's just fancy for when I click on this button, go to my page of buttons. And then I have to come down here and choose the page I want that button to link with. Now, sometimes you get lucky and it just defaults to it and remembers it, but sometimes it doesn't. So make sure you check. So now that means when I click on this button, see, this is what I don't like about black brackets. Let me fix that again. So I want button page, and I want it to link with the, now it says button page. That's kind of silly, but now when I click on this button at point of sale, it will take me to my furniture page. So I'm just going to go back one. Now, of course, button page is not, not very intuitive. So I might call the caption furniture. And of course, I'm just going to give it a color so it's not so boring. Now, when I'm working on my actual furniture page, I'm going to show you some shortcuts because you're going to have multiple items that you want to put on that page. And rather than visit the font and the color for each button, I'll show you a little bit of a time saver. So I'm going to go to my button page. This is my furniture page. I'm going to choose one button. I'm going to make the action item. I'm going to come down here and choose the item. We'll choose my redwood chaise again. I'm going to select a color, and I usually like to make that color match the one on the main page. And now I'm going to preview. Oh, and I got to change the name or the caption, redwood chaise. Now, rather than construct each button individually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my copy paste. So click, copy, paste, paste, paste. So what that does is it gives me a consistent font and a consistent color throughout the page. Now all I need to do is visit each button and associate it with a particular item. So I'll come to this button here, go into my item lookup, and I want to associate this with my patio set. And then of course I would change my caption and then preview to take a look at it. And there we go. And I would just go to my next button, find an item that I want to associate it with. And with this one, I want to sell, I think I've got some chairs in here. Yeah, I have some chairs. And I'll just call it patio chairs. And then I'll preview. So that's how you create a new page. Of course, you're linking a button from the main page to that new page, and then leveraging copy and paste for each of the items. It's just a little bit of a time saver. Now I'm going to talk to you about run pages because run pages are pretty cool. So I already set one up. So I created a run page called Items and Discount. And so it was a new page. I gave it a name, Items and Discounts. I'm going to just cancel out of that. And then I connected this button to the Items and Discount page. And the action I chose was Run Page for this button. And what that means is when I click on this button, Counterpoint, I want you to go to the Run page and touch each and every one of these buttons for me. So what I did is I said, when I run the page, I'm going to sell a 5-gallon crepe myrtle. I'm going to sell an Adams putter. I'm going to apply a 10% transaction discount, and then I want the run page to take me right to the tender screen. Pretty neat stuff. Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to save my layout before I leave, just so I have a fresh copy of it. I'm going to save what I've done so far, save again. And now I'm going to log into point of sale. And I had mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint presentation, you want to test your buttons. By the way, your salespeople will not see these changes if they're currently ringing a sale and you've made changes to the design. Your point of sale people won't see the changes until they log out of point of sale and relog back in. So they don't have to shut down Counterpoint, they just need to close point of sale. So first I'm going to test my furniture page. Click, oh, look at that. I'm going to sell that, going to sell that, going to sell that. Perfect, works beautifully. I'm going to go home. Let me see if this button works. This is a button I linked to an item. Oh, it's pausing at quantity. Yeah, I want to sell 2 of those. So that's that pause at quantity switch at the item level. I'm going to go ahead and void this ticket. My customer changed their mind. Now I'm going to execute the run page, and you're never going to see the run page. So I'm going to click on Sell Items with a Discount. So Counterpoint added the items, it applied the transaction discount, and it took me to the tender screen. How cool is that? A little bit of a time saver. So that's touchscreen designing. It's not hard. It can be a little labor intensive, and I've seen some people do some really fancy things with their touchscreen. Um, I do want to mention something about images because images can be a little tricky. So I'm going to go back to set up point of sale touchscreen codes, and I'll call it my combo. So I have people that like to put some, images they grab off the internet onto their buttons. You have to be really careful about the size of those images. So if I come to, I'll just come to my furniture one. And if I come here to this image line and I go into this lookup, any images that you want to associate with your buttons, you're going to have to put in your top level Counterpoint directory under configuration and images. And then you could just select the images from this list. They have to be JPEGs, just so you know. If your image is too big for the button, it's going to fall off the button. So the size of the image needs to be no larger than 15 by 15 pixels. So let's see what this one is. This is pretty big, I'll bet. And we'll preview that. Uh-oh, that's a little bit too big. I don't like that one. And so here's kind of a weirdness with the images. If you attach an image to to a button and it's too big or too small, and you go and resize that image, and then you try and reattach it, Counterpoint remembers the old one. So you'll have to rename the image something else after you resize it. I'm just going to go ahead and restore my layout. Okay, and we're all restored. I'll exit, save my changes, and done. So let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation from current slide. Okay, so your key takeaways today. You should know how to link an item to a button. You should know how to create a new page and link your buttons to a new page so you can have even more items on a single page. And also, if you think of some clever ways or some time savers, you know, for clicking buttons, you could create run pages. So, of course, I always appreciate your feedback. You know, today's session was actually a suggestion. When you get your video, there will be a link to the survey. You can be anonymous if you like, or you can go right to our website, www.cksystem.com/training bytes survey, and go ahead and fill out the survey there. It's only 2 or 3 questions, you know, and they're yes no questions, or, you know, what other topics would you like to hear about? Next month, so next month is March, on March the 3rd, again at 10 and 1 Eastern Time, we're going to talk about an overlooked feature in Counterpoint called alternate units. An alternate unit is a way on one SKU to say to Counterpoint, I sell this by the each for $2, but I also sell it by the 6-pack for $12. And I also sell it by the case of 24 for $48. And it's a pretty nice feature. Now, another way to use alternate units is, well, you know, I do sell it by the each, but when I buy it from my vendor, I have to buy it by the 6-pack or I have to buy it by the case of 24. So I'm going to show you how to do all that. And I'm also going to show you how to define order minimums and ordering in multiples when you are purchasing. So that'll be a really nice session. Make sure you sign up for it. So that being said, I'll take questions. So let me check the chat. What? No questions? Nobody has a question for me? Oh, wait a moment. Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions, I really appreciate your time today. I know everyone's very, very busy in their retail stores. So if you want to attend the 1 o'clock session, you're more than welcome to. There's no limit. And hopefully, I will see you on March the 3rd when we talk about alternate units. Everyone, have a fantastic day. Bye.